She was the HOA president, and she ruled our neighborhood with an iron fist. When I, a quiet veteran, raised the American flag on my own property, she called it a violation. She threatened me, trespassed on my lawn, and finally, she called the cops to have me arrested. She thought she had won. But the men who stepped out of that cruiser weren't just cops. They were the soldiers from my old platoon. And they were about to teach her a lesson about rules, respect, and who she was really messing with. After 20 years of service, of dust and noise and a life dictated by orders, all I wanted was quiet. My name is Jack Callahan. For 2 decades, my world had been the harsh deserts of the Middle East and the disciplined life of an Army Ranger. My joints ached with memories, and my mind craved a silence that you can only truly appreciate after you've lived without it. When I was medically retired, I took my pension and bought a small house in a place that looked like the exact opposite of my old life. Maple Creek Estates. The brochure called it a harmony of living. Every lawn was a perfect green carpet. Every mailbox was a uniform black. Every house, including my new one, was painted in a shade called subtle taupe. It was the kind of oppressive, peaceful conformity that I thought would be a balm for my soul. I wasn't looking for friends or community events. I was looking for a place to be invisible, to drink my morning coffee on the porch and watch the world go by without having to be a part of it. I wanted to finally, truly, be home. My first week was bliss. I unpacked my boxes, arranged my sparse furniture, and found a deep satisfaction in the simple act of mowing my own lawn. No one bothered me. I'd give a polite nod to neighbors fetching their mail, but that was the extent of our interaction. It was perfect. It was everything I had been dreaming of, but there was one thing missing. In every place I had ever served, in every forward operating base from Kandahar to Mosul, one thing had always been there: the flag, the stars and stripes. It was more than just cloth and dye to me. It was a symbol of the promise I'd made, of the brothers I'd lost, and of the country that, for all its faults, I had dedicated my life to defending. My small, beige house felt incomplete without it. On my second Saturday at Maple Creek, I got to work. I had ordered a proper, 20-foot residential flagpole. I spent the morning digging the hole, mixing the concrete, and setting the sleeve perfectly plumb. It was hard work, and my bad knee complained with every shovel of dirt, but it was good work. Honest work. By late afternoon, the concrete was set, the pole was up, and for the first time, I raised the flag in my own front yard. I stood back, wiping sweat from my brow, and felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The brilliant red, white, and blue was a stark, beautiful contrast to the endless beige of the neighborhood. It snapped smartly in the gentle afternoon breeze. It felt right. It felt like home. I didn't know it then, but I had just declared war. My first inkling of trouble came 3 days later. It was a crisp, white envelope tucked under my doormat. It wasn't from the post office. It had the Maple Creek Estates HOA logo embossed in the corner. My stomach tightened. I had read the HOA covenants before I bought the place, of course. A 3-inch thick binder of rules about everything from the approved species of garden flowers to the maximum allowable height of a basketball hoop. I was sure I hadn't broken any rules. I opened the letter. The text was printed in a sterile, soulless font. Dear resident of 114 Maple Drive, it has come to the attention of the Homeowners Association Architectural Review Committee that an unapproved structure has been erected on your property, namely, a flagpole. Per Covenant 14, Section B, Paragraph 3, all lawn installations exceeding a height of 6 feet must be pre-approved by the committee. Furthermore, the chosen installation is not on the list of approved manufacturers for lawn ornamentation. You are hereby fined $50 for the initial violation. A further fine of $25 per day will be levied until the unapproved structure is removed. You have 10 days to comply. Welcome to the neighborhood. Sincerely, Brenda Miller, HOA President. I read the letter twice. Then a third time. A flagpole. An unapproved flagpole. I let out a short, sharp laugh that was completely devoid of humor. After everything I had seen, everything I had done, I was being threatened with fines over a symbol of freedom. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. The fine itself was trivial, but the principle of the thing, that lit a slow-burning fire in my gut. I tossed the letter onto my kitchen counter. They could send their fines. They could send their letters. The flag was staying point. 2 days later, I met Brenda Miller in the flesh. I was on my porch, enjoying my coffee, when a pristine white Lexus SUV pulled up to the curb in front of my house. A woman with a helmet of blonde hair, a turquoise pantsuit, and a face set in a permanent scowl emerged. She marched up my walkway like she was leading a charge. "Are you the resident of this property?" she demanded, without so much as a hello. Her voice was exactly as I had imagined, sharp, grating, and dripping with self-importance. "I am," I said, calmly, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "And you must be Brenda." "I am the president of this homeowners association," she corrected me, puffing out her chest. "And you are in violation. Did you or did you not receive our notice?" "I received it," I confirmed. "And?" she prodded, tapping her foot impatiently. "The structure is still standing. The fines are accumulating, you know. You're at $100 already." I looked from her scowling face up to the flag, which was waving gently in the morning sun. "The flag stays, Brenda." A flash of disbelief, then pure rage, crossed her features. "Excuse me? You don't get to decide that. We have rules here. We have bylaws. This isn't some lawless wasteland. We maintain standards to protect our property values. Your gaudy flagpole is an eyesore, and it is not in compliance." "It's a flagpole," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, displaying the American flag. "There are federal laws that protect my right to do so, laws that supersede your little binder of rules." I was referring to the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. I had a feeling she wasn't the type to care about federal law when her own power was in question. Asterisk, "I don't care about your federal laws," she shrieked, her voice rising. "I care about the rules of this community. You signed a contract. You agreed to the covenants. You will take it down, or I will have it taken down for you, and I will bill you for the cost." I just looked at her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move from my chair. "You will not set foot on my property again without my permission," I said, my tone flat and final. "And you will not touch my flag. We're done here." I turned and went back inside, closing the door behind me. I could hear her sputtering in indignation for another minute before her car door slammed and she sped away. The quiet I had cherished was gone, replaced by a tense, simmering anger. This wasn't about a pole anymore. This was about a bully who had mistaken my desire for peace for weakness. And if there's one thing my life had taught me, it's how to deal with bullies. The next few days were a war of attrition. Every morning, a new fine was taped to my door. The total was now up to $250. I ignored them. I saw Brenda's white Lexus drive past my house slowly, multiple times a day. She was watching me, waiting for me to break. I just continued my routine, making sure to give a slow, deliberate salute to the flag every morning in her full view. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon. I was in my backyard, trying to fix a leaky sprinkler head, when I heard a metallic clanging from the front yard. My blood ran cold. I got up, my bad knee protesting, and walked around the side of the house. There she was. Brenda. She was on my lawn, right at the base of the flagpole, wrestling with the halyard, the rope used to raise and lower the flag. She was trying to bring it down herself. A red haze descended over my vision. This was a line that could not be uncrossed. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor anymore. She was a trespasser desecrating a symbol that was sacred to me. "Brenda." My voice was a low growl. It was a voice I hadn't used in years, a voice that had made young soldiers snap to attention. She jumped, startled, and dropped the rope. I am simply enforcing the bylaws," she stammered, trying to regain her composure. "This is coming down today. Get off my property now," I said, taking a slow step toward her. I didn't run. I didn't yell. I just advanced, my eyes locked on hers. She saw something in my face then, something that finally pierced through her bubble of entitlement. It was a look she had never seen in Maple Creek Estates. She saw a man who had reached his limit. She scrambled backward, tripping over her own feet and nearly falling. "I'm calling the police," she shrieked, fumbling for her phone as she scurried back to the sidewalk. "You are a hostile, threatening resident. I feel unsafe. I'm calling 911. Go ahead," I said, stopping at the edge of my lawn. "You do that." I watched as she frantically stabbed at her phone, her voice a high-pitched, hysterical mess as she spoke to the dispatcher. She was laying it on thick, talking about my aggressive posture and her fear for her life. all while standing on a public sidewalk. She was trying to create a narrative to paint me as the villain. I just stood there, my arms crossed, and waited. Let her call them. Let her bring the full weight of her imagined authority down on me. She had started a fire, and now she was going to get burned. Less than 10 minutes later, a police cruiser turned onto our street. It slowed and then parked behind Brenda's white Lexus, its lights casting rhythmic blue and red flashes across the beige houses. Brenda's face lit up with triumph. Her saviors had arrived. Two officers got out of the car. They were young, professional, their faces impassive. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other a bit shorter, with a wiry frame. They walked toward Brenda, who immediately launched into her performance. "Oh, thank goodness you're here, officers," she cried, pointing a trembling finger at me. "That man, he threatened me. He has this illegal thing in his yard." And when I, as the HOA president, tried to address it, he became aggressive. I was afraid he was going to attack me. The taller officer held up a hand to silence her. "Ma'am, please, let us handle this." His partner stayed with her while he walked toward me. He stopped at the edge of my lawn, his eyes scanning me, the house, and then the flagpole. He had a look of tired professionalism, the look of a cop who has dealt with 1,000 petty neighborhood disputes. "Sir," he began, in a formal tone, "we've received a call about a disturbance. Can you tell me what's going on here?" I met his gaze. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at him, and then at his partner, who was now glancing over. And then I saw it. A small pin on the collar of the second officer's uniform. A tiny, almost unnoticeable pin of 2 crossed rifles. The infantry insignia. My eyes flicked back to the first officer. And suddenly, my brain, trained for years to recognize details, connected the dots. The way he stood, the calm, steady look in his eyes. The first officer squinted slightly, his head tilting. His professional mask wavered for a fraction of a second. "Sir, do I know you?" he asked, his voice changing. Losing its formal edge, his partner took a step closer. "Hey, Mike," he said to the first officer. "Take a look. The house number, 114. Callahan." He looked at me, his eyes widening in disbelief. "No way. Jack Stonewall Callahan." The taller officer, Mike, stared at me. The name Stonewall was a nickname I hadn't heard in years, given to me after a particularly nasty firefight where my squad had held a line that should have broken. A slow smile spread across my face. "Corporal Miller," I said, my voice warm. "For the first time that day. And Specialist Davis. You're a long way from the Karingal Valley." Officer Miller, Mike, broke into a huge grin. He stepped onto my lawn and clapped me on the shoulder. "Sergeant Callahan." "Sir, I can't believe it. What are you doing here?" Officer Davis came over, shaking my hand vigorously. "We heard you retired, Sarge, but we didn't know you moved out this way. It's damn good to see you." Brenda watched this reunion from the sidewalk, her jaw slack with utter confusion. Her triumphant expression had melted into a mask of bewilderment. Her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling before her eyes. "Officers," she snapped, unable to stand being ignored. "What is going on? He is the one you should be talking to. He is the one breaking the rules." Miller turned his head to look at her, but his smile was gone. It was replaced by a look of ice-cold professionalism that was far more intimidating than his earlier calm. "Ma'am," he said, his voice flat, "I believe you're the one who made the 911 call, and you're the one standing on the sidewalk. This man," he gestured to me, "is on his own property. And this man," he pointed up at the flag, "is my former sergeant, a decorated ranger who served this country for 20 years. Now, what seems to be the problem with his American flag?" Brenda was flustered. It's against the bylaws. The pole is unapproved. It's an eyesore." Officer Davis spoke up. "Ma'am, with all due respect, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005 is a federal law. It expressly forbids any homeowners association from restricting a homeowner's right to display the flag. His flagpole is of reasonable size and is not obscene. It is a perfectly legal and, I might add, admirable display. But our rules," she sputtered. "Your rules do not supersede federal law," Miller said curtly. He then looked past her, at her white Lexus. "Also, ma'am, is this your vehicle?" "Yes, of course it is." "Well, you're parked in a fire lane. It's clearly marked no parking." I'm going to have to write you a citation for that." "A citation?" she shrieked. "You're giving me a ticket?" "Yes, ma'am," Miller said, already pulling out his ticket book. "And Sergeant Callahan here," he turned back to me, a slight twinkle in his eye, "mentioned that you were on his property, attempting to tamper with his flagpole. Is that correct, sir?" "That is correct, officer," I said. Miller nodded grimly. "Ma'am, I'm also giving you a formal warning for criminal trespassing. It will be on record. If we get another call about you being on this property without the owner's permission, you will be arrested. Do you understand me?" Brenda's face had gone from red to a pasty white. She was speechless. She just stood there as Miller calmly wrote out the parking ticket and handed it to her. She took it with a trembling hand. "It was good to see you, Sergeant," Davis said, shaking my hand again. "We need to get your number. We've got a few of the other guys from the 2nd Ranger Battalion in the area. We get together for beers once a month." "I'd like that," I said, a genuine smile on my face. "I'd like that a lot." They gave Brenda one last, hard look, tipped their hats to me, and got back in their cruiser. As they pulled away, Brenda was left standing on the sidewalk, a parking ticket in her hand, her face a perfect portrait of defeated rage. She shot me a look of pure venom, got in her car, and peeled out down the street that I stood in my yard for. A long time after she was gone, looking up at the flag, the quiet had returned, but it was a different kind of quiet now. It was a victorious quiet, but the story doesn't end there. The revenge was only just beginning. That evening, I got a call from Mike Miller. He and Davis had told their story back at the precinct, and it had spread. The next day, an article appeared on a local news blog. The headline read, "Local HOA President attempts to fine Army veteran over American flag, gets schooled on federal law by cops from his own platoon." The story went viral in our community. The HOA's Facebook page was flooded with angry comments. People I'd never met were leaving supportive notes on my doorstep. Veterans from all over the county were sharing the story, expressing their outrage at Brenda's actions. The HOA board was in full-blown panic mode. They called an emergency meeting for the following Wednesday. The notice stated they would be discussing recent community feedback. On the night of the meeting, I walked into the community clubhouse, and I wasn't alone. With me were Mike Miller and Dave Davis, out of uniform, along with 5 other men, all former Rangers from our platoon who lived in the area. We walked in as a group and took seats in the front row. The room was packed. My neighbors, the ones who had been quietly nodding at me for weeks, were all there, and they looked angry. Brenda and the rest of the board sat at a table at the front, looking pale and nervous. Brenda tried to start the meeting, but she was immediately shouted down. One of my neighbors stood up. "I want to know why our HOA president is harassing a veteran and bringing national disgrace to our community," he yelled. To a chorus of applause, another homeowner stood. "I want a full review of the bylaws, and I want a vote of no confidence in our current president." The meeting descended into chaos. Brenda tried to bang her gavel, but no one was listening. It was a full-blown rebellion. For 2 hours, she and the board were grilled by their own residents. They were called bullies, tyrants, and an embarrassment. Finally, the vote was called. It was nearly unanimous. Brenda Miller was recalled as president of the Maple Creek Estates HOA, effective immediately. She sat there, stunned, as her tiny empire crumbled around her that a new president was nominated and elected on the spot. A reasonable-looking woman who immediately proposed a new bylaw. Bylaw 27, the Callahan Rule, which explicitly stated the right of every resident to fly the American flag, and offered a formal, written apology to me on behalf of the entire community. It passed without a single no vote. I walked out of that clubhouse into the cool night air, flanked by my brothers. We went to a local bar and spent hours catching up, laughing, and telling old stories. For the first time since I'd moved in, I didn't feel like I was just living in a house. I felt like I was part of a community. The next morning, I sat on my porch with my coffee, just as I always did. The neighborhood was quiet again, but it was my kind of quiet now. A respectful quiet. A peaceful quiet. Across the street, a moving truck was parked in front of Brenda Miller's house. I took a slow sip of my coffee, looked up at the stars and stripes waving proudly against the morning sky, and I smiled. I was finally home.